I've got some really good news for you if you want to make threats against Russians on social media. You know, threats on social media against anybody they're generally frowned upon, except right now Facebook has just declared that you now can allow for posts threatening violence against Russians, specifically with regard to Ukraine. So this change in policy just came out from Meta Platforms. It will allow Facebook and Instagram users in certain countries to call for violence against Russians and Russian soldiers in the context of the Ukraine invasion. Now, you can't call for violence against Russians if you say, for instance, I ate my borscht tonight and some of the red beet juice splattered on my blazer. I'm going to kill you, Russians. That is not allowed. But you can say, hey, I really like Ukraine. I want to kill you, Russians. That is totally fine. You've got to be very specific about what kind of threats of violence you're making against the Russian people. This is according to internal emails that were seen by Reuters last Thursday. This is a temporary change to its hate speech policy. Facebook, Instagram, all the social media companies have hate speech policies. And the point of these policies is that hate will not be tolerated unless Mark Zuckerberg wants to tolerate it. Hate will not be tolerated on the platform except when Zuckerberg deems it right. There's another change that took place on Facebook with regard to Ukraine specifically. One of the groups that is fighting in Ukraine is a neo-Nazi group. It's called the Azov Battalion. There are lots of different military and paramilitary groups fighting in Ukraine, but one of them is a neo-Nazi group called the Azov Battalion. You were not permitted to support the Azov Battalion on Facebook. That previously violated its hate speech policy. Now, temporarily, during the war in Ukraine, you are allowed to make supportive comments of the neo-Nazi group because that neo-Nazi group is fighting against the Russians. Now, by the way, I totally understand why, depending on the context, Facebook would change this hate speech policy. I totally understand why they might say that in some cases it's okay to make comments in support of Nazis and calling for violence against the Russians. Don't forget, in World War II, we teamed up with Russian communists, we in the United States, teamed up with Russian communists to fight the Nazis. The communists are no better than the Nazis, but the United States determined it was in our geopolitical interest to defeat Nazi Germany, so the way to do it was to team up with the Russian communists. We did that, and then immediately after the Second World War, we started another war with communist Russia. That went on, and that was called the Cold War. So I can understand how, in this case, they say, look, right now, you got to put your issues with the Nazis aside. We've got to team up with the Nazis to fight the Russians, who are increasingly looking like the exact same old Russian communists who were fighting in the Cold War. Okay. The question for me is, do we trust big tech with this power? If we are going to say that certain things are going to be censored, certain speech is going to be encouraged, even certain hate speech is going to be encouraged, even certain direct calls for violence are going to be encouraged, even certain defenses of neo-Nazis are going to be encouraged now, do we trust big tech to make that call? I don't. Certainly not. Do we trust big tech not to use this exact same power, this exact same kind of capriciousness to say, okay, now we're going to look at domestic politics. Now that we're done dealing with the Nazis in Ukraine and the communists in Russia, now we're going to look at those Nazis in America. You know, those January 6th people. Do we not believe that Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and Google, do we really think they wouldn't use this power against us? To say, actually, it's okay to call for certain violence against certain groups here in America. Actually, okay, it's fine to support certain violent hate groups here in America. They already do that. It's fine to support Antifa. It's fine to support BLM. Antifa and BLM spent 8 months burning the country down in 2020. It's fine to support them. And by the way, it's basically tolerated to threaten conservatives on Twitter. Maybe it's technically against the letter of the law, but rarely will people get in trouble for defaming, insulting, even threatening conservatives who the left believes are deplorable and irredeemable. Do we trust these guys to have this power? I certainly do not. I'm so glad you liked that clip. Now, please ring the bell, subscribe, maybe leave a comment. Head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, wherever you get your audio podcasts. Subscribe to the Michael Knowles Show, MICHAEL, KNWLES, SHOW. Leave a 5-star review. We'll see you next time.